Letter 12. Ne mutlu Türküm diyene. Dear Lady Mary, I have noticed that you do not spend much time dissecting the Turkish character or passing judgments on their behavior. You describe things without analyzing them, and I like that, for I try to do the same thing in my professional and personal lives. The fact that you refuse to be condescendingly critical towards the Turks is the greatest legacy of your letters. You understood that it would be extremely arrogant for a foreigner to come along and categorize the citizens of a country without this falling into rude generalizations and stereotypes. You spent more time analyzing yourself and your very own social structure rather than the Turks. About the only comment I read that you make about the Turkish character is that they do not lie. 'Tis a degree of generosity to tell the truth, and 'tis very rare that any Turk will assert a solemn falsehood. You also tell Abbé Conte that, I can truly inform you, sir, that the Turks are not so ignorant as we fancy them to be in matters of politics, or philosophy, or even of gallantry. It is actually we in the West who are the ignorant ones in matters of politics, and especially in matters concerning the Turks. I think that still today, years after the image of the terrible Turks beating at the doors of Vienna, and the curse left by the film Midnight Express, there remain many misconceptions and misunderstandings about the true nature of the country of Turkey and its people. Over many years of travel to Turkey, I have noted some Turkish attitudes that are different than the ones in my own culture. In observing these tendencies, I have tried to remain as objective as you, viewing neither through rose-colored glasses nor lenses of scorn. You can understand, however, that my outlook is through a corner of a window smudged by the personal baggage of my upbringing and culture. As you state so clearly, human understanding is as much limited as human power or human strength. As I mentioned, there are many basic and egregious misconceptions about Turks that prevail to this day, and it is hard to imagine that in our globalized world, people still hang on to fusty images inherited from the past and kept alive by prejudice and apprehension. Turkey is not in the Middle East, and the Turkish people are not Arabs. They are not Bedouin camel riders who live in the desert. They speak the Turkish language, not Arabic, and this language is written in the Latin alphabet. The country is predominantly Muslim, but all religions, since the times of the Seljuks, may practice there, and you can see churches and synagogues throughout the country, just as when you were here, Lady Mary. There is freedom of religion, and the country is not governed by Sharia or Islamic laws. Turks are proud to be a part of the only democratic secular nation in the world, with the majority of its population being Muslim. Inasmuch as is possible in our world today, where women still face the same uphill battle as they did in your times for the same equality and independence as men, women in Turkey enjoy the same legal freedom as men and are not forced to cover their heads in public. Turks are not terrorists. While the rest of the world may still hold false perceptions of Turks, I often wonder how the Turks would describe themselves. Perhaps this is not so strange, as there are many types of people in Turkey, and it would be difficult to encapsulate the diversity of the many races, religions, origins, classes, and social strata of this country. The Turks, on their own scale, are as culturally mixed as Americans. The lesson that America gives to the world is that a profusion of cultures leads to a vibrant social force if it is allowed to breathe and grow. And the same diversity prospers in Turkey. There is no real Turkish ethnic norm, as Turkey has a mixed population. Laz, Kurds, Arabs, and the descendants of the Turkish tribes from Central Asia that came here starting in the 10th century. These ethnic types provide a startling diversity of physical types among the Turks. There are Turks with big Black Sea noses, tall Balkan blondes, and short, strapping Asians with high cheekbones and slanted eyes that seem to be stepping right off the page of a Persian miniature. There are the fair-skinned blonde or red-headed descendants of the Circassians who came to populate the harems of the sultans, those skins shiningly white that you referred to when you went to the baths. Lean, olive oil-skinned Mediterranean types, Kurds with long noses and striking, vibrant eyes, and the solid, pointy-head, chunky Anatolian peasant with facial features as if carved by a knife. There are women with delicate, almost Far Eastern features, and those with broad Slavic faces. There are the red-haired crusader babies of the Black Sea, the hatchet-nosed Lazes, and the burnished-skinned Arabs of the Hatay. This diversity fosters as well a wide variety of clothing styles, from the designer fashions of the glossy-lipped Istanbul fashion plate to the knotted cummerbunds, tunics, and checkered head wraps of the people of the southeast, to the baggy trousers of central Anatolia, worn by both men and women, to the flashy, gay-colored clothes with sequins and ribbons running down the backs of Kurdish women. Turks wear flat cloth caps, white skull caps, highly colored silk women's scarves, or simple cotton ones bordered in crocheted little flowers. Many of these styles are probably still very similar to the ones you must have seen, Lady Mary. However, today's globalization is starting to erase this diversity in favor of t-shirts, jeans, and sports shoes, now worn quasi-universally by the youth of Turkey. I was on the lookout from my first day in Turkey for the stereotype that I had inherited from other people's eyes, and which proved in some ways true. In French, to describe someone as stubborn, you say, he is as mule-headed as a Turk. I would not call Turks as stubborn as much as I would call them authoritarian and obstinate. Turks are assertive and will always decide what is best for you, even if it is not what you had in mind. You are not allowed to order a dish on the menu if the waiter doesn't think it is in your best interest, and you will be brought dishes you did not order or have any interest in just because he thinks they are what you should have. You are not allowed to buy an orange sweater if the shopkeeper does not think the color suits you, no matter how green is your money. I have begged hairdressers to cut my hair short, only to have them slam down the scissors and say, "No, I will not cut it that way. A woman like you must always be able to toss her hair." I once went to have a manicure, picked out a discreet color of beige, and then dozed off in the chair. When I awoke, I looked down to see fire engine red polish on my nails. When I protested, the woman manicurist said, "No, I am sorry. You are a woman born to wear red nails, not boring pink ones." In the end, it is always best to give in and smile, and enjoy that someone is making your decisions for you that day. Turks have a built-in personal radar system that is very sophisticated. They are aware of everything going on around them. Nothing escapes their purview, and they make it their business to look out after yours. They have eyes everywhere. They do not miss a trick, and nothing gets by them. And don't even try to pull anything past them. This is not the secret police type of surveillance, though. It is rather a discreet way of making sure that you are being taken care of, that children do not fall down steps, or that a lady who is about to faint will be given a stool, for example. Turks are very protective and want no trouble or problems for people in their immediate territory. It can take an official form, like traffic checkpoints on the Malatya Road, but for the most part, it is more like an informal angel watching over you. It is done thoroughly and so discreetly that you are taken off guard when you discover it. There is a Turk behind every tree, in every corner, aware of everything, ready to spring into action if need be. It is the hotel clerk in Van who calls his colleague in the next town you are traveling to in order to verify that you arrived safely because he sensed you were not feeling well. It is the shopkeeper in Kayseri who says, "Good morning, Miss Keddy," when I step into his store. However did he learn my name? It is the grocer in Sivas, during the days of political difficulties, who puts down his gun to serve me a cherry juice, pulls out a stool for me, and then picks up his pistol again and stands at the door. It is the carpet shop in Van, in eastern Turkey, where I was greeted with an enthusiastic, "Welcome, I have been waiting for you to show up." When I asked him how he could have known of my existence, he said, "Oh yes, I know all about you. I heard you were in town and I was waiting for you. The entire town is talking about the tall blonde statue of a woman walking down the streets." Turks love flowers. It is a national passion. They are on all curtain fabrics, women's silk headscarves, and teapots. Florists spend hours making large, ornate floral wreaths for weddings. Turks create complex bouquets of plastic flowers with artificial resin dewdrops on them, which outsell cut flowers. They layer petals on salads and scatter them on dining tables. And they plant flowers in empty olive oil cans and then stick them in every conceivable spot. They are just crazy about flowers. But one flower is beloved above all others, the tulip. I will talk to you about the famed Iznik Gardens of Paradise in another letter, but this story will give you some indication of their passion. There is a tale about the Lale, tulip, Cami, in Kırşehir, built in 1272. The name, supposedly, is derived from a tulip of great beauty that a student in the near Jacabe Madrase gave to the builders. This one flower was sold to finance the reconstruction of the building as a mosque. But I do not need to tell you about this passion for tulips, do I, Lady Mary? Ahmet III, the Sultan in power when you were in Turkey, left his mark on history by fashioning the tulip era, a period of gaiety and enlightenment, centered around a passion for tulips in art, literature, and social life. Tulips were popular even before the craze that swept Turkey when you were there. Buzbek, the Austrian ambassador who came to Suleiman's court in 1554, wrote in his letters, "We saw everywhere an abundance of flowers. The Turks are so fond of flowers that even the marching troops have their orders not to trample them." He brought them back to Europe, and by 1630, the tulipomania craze swept through Holland. Turks fully enjoy each season of the year, and tulips are a symbol of the rebirth and joy of life. Tulips are seen everywhere today, in pots on the Turkish Airlines counters, on every brochure published, on keychains. It has become the semi-official symbol of Turkey. As for all those thousands of glasses of tea, they are served in little glasses shaped like a tulip, of course. However, the tulip has a serious rival in the rose, symbol of the prophet. Even in the dustiest and most modest village in Turkey, there will always be an attempt to create some sort of a public garden. It may take the form of a grassy patch in the middle of the traffic circle, always planted with rose bushes. There are often lush rose gardens around neighborhood mosques, lovingly tended by a local gardener. In my eyes, the sweetest roses in Turkey are the pink ones that grow on the banks of the Green River in Tokat. Once I was in a shop with a friend who wanted to buy a teapot, and the shopkeeper kept showing her model after model, but she didn't care for any of them. He finally brought out one that had bright red roses painted all over it, and a clutch of ladies standing nearby and observing us cried out, "Oh yes, that is the prettiest one. She definitely must take that one." However, my friend left without a purchase, and I felt obliged to stay behind and explain to the shopkeeper that he shouldn't be offended, for it was not a reflection on the quality of his merchandise, but simply because my friend just really didn't like flowers. I will never forget the look of total disbelief on all of their faces, for such a thing is just inconceivable to a Turk. Besides flowers, Turks love nature more than any people I have ever met. It is sacred to them, for the green of nature is also the color of the prophet, and its verdant vibrancy is reproduced on door and window frames, on dome tops, on rugs, and in basil pots. The network of national forests covering the entire country of Turkey is extensive, with the Ilgaz Dalara National Forest being one of the most beloved. Turks love nothing better than to climb to high mountain plateaus for picnics, and failing that, to stop by the side of the road to sit under trees and share fresh fruit and tea, or to barbecue on the grill. The country of Turkey has been blessed with an extraordinary natural bounty, which is not lost on the Turks, who venerate and savor their seas, mountains, forests, and lakes. They love birds, and keep them in lacy cages in gardens, just like the Ottoman sultans who ordered that stone bird houses be built into the outside walls of their mosques. Turks remain close to the farm and to the earth, relish in the coming of spring and those blooming wild tulips, and appreciate the bounty of the earth, be it rich harvests or honeybees. One of the most famous poems by Aşık Veysel, the greatest folk poet of modern Turkey, is entitled Black Earth, and reads as follows: "My faithful sweetheart is the black earth, for though I wounded her with my hoe and shovel, she smiled and gave me red roses. My only true love is the black earth." Galloping still across that black earth in eastern Turkish highlands are their beloved horses, ever revered as the sacred wings of Turks. As part of their love of nature, they have a particular veneration for water. They never pass up a chance to drink from the numerous public fountains in town, or fresh from bubbling springs by the side of roads. Traditionally, one of the most pious religious acts is to establish a public water fountain. Turks love their water like a Frenchman loves his wine, and they can distinguish various spring waters with the same sophistication as a Bordelais does his vintages. They have their most venerated springs, with Niksar and Ayvaz waters holding a special esteem. They never drive past a roadside spring without stopping to fill up their bottles and canteens, keeping jerry cans and plastic bottles in the trunk expressly for this purpose. Turks love music, listening to it live or canned, making it, and singing it. They are as diversely talented musically as Americans. There is loud and incessant music everywhere in Turkey. On buses, in parks, in restaurants, on street corners, and in shops. They have a musical horror vacui. It is often a bit tiring, for you can't have a moment of peace to hear yourself think or listen to the birds chirping in the morning. But in truth, there is no chance of ever feeling gloomy or lonely with all that perky music surrounding you. They enjoy all kinds of music, from folk songs to classic Ottoman pieces to modern pop. And despite what is said, more people than not admit to the guilty pleasure of arabesque music and its syrupy sentiments. The star system functions full force in Turkey, with their musicians and singers treated like minor deities. I already have spoken to you about the family, but the idea of family in Turkey goes beyond the sense of one household unit. Turks have a communal commitment to their fellow man and view society as a whole as an extended part of their family. Just as they place the family above all else in life, the viewpoint that society must be lived as a harmonious unit is just as important. Our sense of restraint and privacy holds no interest for them. They eat their mezes together. They drink their tea from the same pot. No Turk eats alone. No Turk dies alone. No Turk goes off on a trip alone. No Turk walks down the street alone. Turks are melodramatic, emotional, and sentimental, with a culture of exaggeration, the dramatic, and the overblown. They are sentimental, huggy, and effusive. They have outsized passions, like Texans. Their songs are often dark, gloomy, and tragically sentimental. The obverse of their joyous, humorous side is an often lugubrious gloom, with the theme of the malcontent exile strongly represented in cinema, literature, and music. The tragic is considered a normal part of life, seen in the old movies that continually replay on television, in their songs, and on the front pages of newspapers, which are filled with stories of passion killings, family dramas, and other such tragic personal events, accompanied by high-color photographs. Turks are endearingly sweet to each other, constantly touching each other, poking, smiling, saying millions of platitudes, touching hands to hearts, and using your name repeatedly when they speak to you. They can't pass by a child without instinctively touching it, pinching its cheeks, tossing it in the air, or kissing it. No one looks at poetry askance, and the oral tradition is strong, with most Turks able to recite at least one poem of their Yunus Emre or Mevlana, and they can sing the lyrics to all their sentimental favorite songs. Even the Ottoman sultans wrote poetry in between war campaigns. Turks are curious. They will look at anything, from vegetable cutter salesmen on ferries, to fistfights, to car crashes, to wedding parties, to people reading books. They do not want to miss anything, and will question everything in their surroundings. I used to think it was because I was a foreigner that they seemed so intrigued by my comings and goings. But in fact, they do it with everyone. Once my poet friend started to explain to me about the mystic Burhanuddin, teacher of Mevlana, in front of his tomb in Kayseri, and within 5 minutes he had attracted a crowd of 12 people who gathered around him to attend his lecture. Once, while enjoying the spectacular drive from Boyabat to Sinop, I stopped the car right after the Changel Pass to relish the view from the scenic overlook and to pause to eat a peach. Within 2 minutes, 3 cars pulled up, and 10 Turks got out and surrounded me, chattering away and offering me water and more fruit. If I had stopped, there had to be a reason, and they did not want to miss out on it. I once went to visit a Khan in Azina Bazaar, a totally empty village with 1 barber, a small grocery store, and a baker. Minding my own business, I got out of the jitney and walked over to the Khan and started to take pictures. Once again, just as at the Changel Pass, out of nowhere appeared 9 men who happened to be driving by and decided they needed to stop and see what I was doing. Chattering, poking, grabbing my sketchbook, peering at my camera, and asking me all sorts of questions, they turned my simple visit to the Khan into a carnival. It didn't end there. After their visit, a machine-gunned soldier came up to me and said that the mayor in the town hall building next door, who was observing it all from his window, wanted to invite me to his office for tea, turning what was to be a simple visit to a dusty Khan into a full diplomatic event of over 4 hours. Turks are very intrigued by the world around them and receptive to new ideas. They especially want to understand how foreigners think. One winter, after a particularly spectacular lunch of hunkir bendi lamb stew in my beloved Havuzlu restaurant in the covered bazaar, Kapalı Çarşı, in Istanbul, I decided to boldly request a favor of the head cashier when I was leaving. I asked if it would be possible to buy one of the restaurant's plates. He was quite taken aback by this request, and looking at me askance said, "Lady, what are you going to do with these? Just why would you want to buy my plates?" I realized that I was the first person who asked him for such a thing, and being a curious Turk, he needed to know what it was all about. Since I sensed that he was a bit wary about the whole transaction, I knew I had to come up with an interesting and reassuring response, or else I was going to walk out empty-handed. "I collect menus, you see, and plates from my favorite restaurants in the world," I explained. "And in the entire world, yours happens to be one of my all-time favorites," I added with a big smile, hoping to clinch the deal. No smile came back from him, so I plunged ahead. I frame the menus and hang them in my kitchen to inspire me when I cook. When I look at them, I remember the meal that I enjoyed there, the setting, and the company I shared during the meal. As for the plates, when I eat off of them, I hope that my food will absorb the memory of the food of the excellent cooks that was served upon them. And I seek by this small gesture to honor their craftsmanship and artistry. I use them with the hope that my food will be as delicious as the food that I remember eating off of them. I hope that when my guests use them, they will have some of the same joy that I experienced eating off of them, just as I did here today with your marvelous hunkir bendi. I paused to take a deep breath. He continued to blankly stare at me, and finally replied, "Okay, lady, that's very nice, but I still don't understand what you are going to do with my plates." Turks have no inhibitions. This is perhaps the trait that takes a bit getting used to, for it often appears offensive and invasive to foreigners. They naturally and innocently do whatever they want where you are concerned. They will grab newspapers right out of your hand, poke you, sit right next to you, not near you, right next to you, on park benches, tap your shoulder, come up and ask you the most forward questions. You look like you are 45 years old. Is that true? Why do you wear such old-fashioned sunglasses? All with no harm meant, just a curiosity about everything around them. It is impossible to sit quietly on a park bench in a cafe, or be left alone to enjoy a visit somewhere, or to savor a peaceful breakfast without someone coming up to pull out a chair to sit right down with you. They stare directly at you, which is not considered as rude. Being so forward and staring with such impunity in our Western culture would be considered discourteous and aggressively invasive of your space. But for a Turk, it just means that he is being friendly. Do you remember how those women stared at you and poked you when you visited the baths, Lady Mary? That is what I am referring to. Turks are interested in seeing what you are interested in. In Kayseri, a museum guard once followed me around like a puppy, from room to room, and stood next to me as I took notes and sketched. He craned his neck to see what I was doing, and when he couldn't get a good enough view, stood within 1 inch of me and literally breathed down my neck to see. When it just got too much to bear, I slammed my book shut and said enough. When I saw the hurt look in his face, I realized that he was not being nosy, but showing his interest in what I was doing, since it was taking place in his space. Turks are patriotic and have the same pride as Americans at displaying their flag. They name their planes after their favorite cities and rivers. They have a strong sense of pride in being Turkish, united by the same language, culture, and destiny. Many of the customs of the Turks have roots in the principles and teachings of Islam, with a curious mixture of the pre-Islamic customs. Some hold tight to the traditional values of their shaman ancestors. Some Turks would hang a blue bead in their shops or cars, a very Turkish type of life insurance for some, while for others, nothing more than a decorative object. Some would not even pass a sacred tree without tying a votive. Turks do not like to be contradicted. Perhaps this is what the French mean with that mule-headed business. I once asked a bootblack to shine my favorite pair of navy blue kid leather shoes, especially stressing that they were navy blue, not black, and to make sure he did not use black polish. He nodded, pulled out a can, and opened it, and I immediately saw that it was black, and asked him to stop. He got very angry and said, "Lady foreigner, do you really think that I am unable to distinguish between the two? Of course, this is the right color." But of course it was black, and my gorgeous blue shoes were lost forever, just because of the stubbornness of this Turk, who was not going to admit that he did not have navy blue polish in his box. Turks have a sense of humor, and they don't take themselves too seriously. They can make fun of themselves, can criticize themselves easily, and possess an almost fatalistic acceptance about the imperfections of life. They don't expect things to turn out just right, since they know that life itself is not faultless. They are optimistic and know how to laugh heartily. They sit patiently during 2-hour power outages. They wait without complaint for hours for a bus to show up. A Turk will never admit that he does not know the answer to a question or that he does not know what he is doing. If he doesn't comprehend your restaurant order, he will bring you one of everything to make sure you are satisfied. When you hire a personal driver to take you somewhere, he will never admit he doesn't know what you are looking for before setting out. They won't lie, you are right, Lady Mary, but they will cover it up with an elaborate story or subterfuge, which often proves quite amusing. Turks are astute business people and enterprising, quick-witted scrappers. They make things happen and get things accomplished. That is another reason they remind me so much of proactive Americans. They possess a strong sense of individual initiative, along with a commitment to social cohesion. They stick together in times of challenge and hardship, are eager for progress, are clever with money, and have tremendous personal courage. They are determined with the power to wrestle fools. They are survivors. And lastly, I finish with some odds and ends viewpoints. Turks are exuberant, shooting guns off at football games, and applauding when planes land. Turks have no stigma against beggars, but consider them as rather alms-takers, helping all fulfill their pillar of faith. They can't swim to save their lives. They don't read books in public. And they are very proud of their sportsmen, especially when they do battle on the playing fields of Europe. Turks have faces that are immediately readable. The famed hospitality and kindness of Turks will take another letter to discuss. Yet just as I have my Turkey, I have my Turks. Such is how I see them, and I hope my vision is neither oversimplified or offensive. Did you recognize any of these traits in your tutor Ahmed, in your women friends, in your servants, or in any of those 500 Janissaries, Lady Mary? Undoubtedly, the most famous saying of Ataturk, displayed on billboards, on the pedestals of his ubiquitous statues on every village town square, over city hall doors, in the lobby of the most public buildings, and on mountainsides, is the iconic Ne mutlu Türküm diyene. How happy I am to say I am a Turk. With the personality traits that I have been able to observe in Turks, he had every right and reason to promote an awareness of this precious and rich natural resource. This is no false pride, and now the time has come for Turks to shout it out loud for the entire world to hear. Happy to say I am, sincerely yours, Kadria Branning.